Okay, Mr. Brown, good morning. Can you hear us?
I can. Good morning, Judge.
Great. We've got Mr. Brown. We have Mr. Hand here. And do we have Ms. Singer at the South Annex? They are connected to the call. South Annex, are you there? Ms. Nelson, are you able to reach out to the South Annex?
Yes.
Oh, there they are.
Mhm.
Good morning. Are you Ms. Singer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. I'm going to add your lawyer to the spotlight. There's Mr. Brown. Ms. Singer, I'm Judge McBurney. We're going to get on the record in your case, which is 21 SC 178259. You're charged with trafficking in methamphetamine. And it's my understanding, Ms. Singer, that you are prepared to go forward with a plea in your case. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Oops, need to change one thing here. All right. Ms. Singer, before we get started with the plea conversation, I need to make sure that you are comfortable with our setup. And by that, I mean that you have the right to be here in open court, but you are appearing from what we call the South Annex of the county jail. Do you waive your right to be in court, and are you comfortable proceeding virtually?
Yes, Your Honor.
The other right that is implicated in this format that we're using is your right to have Mr. Brown right next to you, so that if you've got questions, you could just lean over and say, hey, what's the judge talking about? Mr. Brown is appearing virtually as well. Looks like I don't know that he's in his professional office. It looks more like a government office. But either way, he's not right by your side. I can make him available to you so you can speak in private by putting you two in a breakout room. But he will not be available for you just to lean over and whisper something to. Are you okay with that setup?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, if at any time you want to speak to Mr. Brown confidentially, just let me know, and I'll move you and Mr. Brown into a Zoom breakout room where no one else can see or hear you on this call. I don't know who's all in the room with you at Union City, but the prosecutor won't be able to hear you. I won't be able to hear you should something like that come up. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. In a moment, Mr. Hand is going to put you under oath. Once you're under oath, it's important that you answer his questions and mine truthfully and completely. It is also important that you ask questions of your own if you're curious about anything or something we talk about is just different than what you and Mr. Brown have been talking about. Will you speak up if there's something that you need better explained to you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Hand, when you are ready.
Yes, Judge. Judge, just as a preliminary matter, the plea will be going under the trafficking in meth statute, which is 16-13-31. That statute does not mention a maximum sentence. It just states that there's a minimum of 25 years for the amount. And so I just want to clarify that for the court. So I won't be
Okay.
giving a maximum.
All right, I'll
For-
take a look at it, but it's 16, 13, 31,
Yes, Judge.
subsection what? Those statutes tend to have about 500 subsections.
Right, subsection E, number 3.
E3. All right, well, I will look at that and we can move on. Thank you.
Yes, Judge. All right, Ms. Singer, if you could raise your hand for me so that I can see it in the camera. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the statements and testimony that you shall give the court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, you can lower it for me. Thank you. Please state your true and correct name for the court.
Tiffany Rochelle Singer.
And Ms. Singer, are you at this time taking or under the influence of any drugs, medicine, or alcohol?
No.
Is there any medicine that you would normally take that you have not been given or that you have not taken yourself today?
No.
And how old are you?
37.
And how far have you gone in school?
Some college.
Can you read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand that you have been charged with trafficking in methamphetamine in indictment 21 SC 178259?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead guilty or not guilty to the charge today?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you plead not guilty or remain silent or refuse to enter a plea at all, that the state is required to prove the charges against you at a jury trial?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review all of your rights with your attorney today?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with your lawyer about all of the charges in today's indictment, including the facts and circumstances in your case?
Yes.
Would you like more time to speak with your lawyer?
No.
Are you satisfied with your lawyer's services?
Yes.
Okay. Attorney Brown, do you at this time waive formal reading of the indictment for purposes of today's plea?
So waived.
And do you waive any and all defects in the indictment for purposes of today's plea?
I don't know of any, but so waived.
Okay. And Your Honor, the state will announce that it is unaware of any outstanding warrants related to the charges in today's case.
Okay.
Ms. Singer, do you understand that the minimum sentence for the charge today in your case is a minimum of 25 years based on the amount of methamphetamines that were located?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand that you're entering a negotiated plea of guilty, which means the state will recommend the following to the court? Your Honor, that is 25 years to serve 10, with the last 5 of the total time to be suspended under the section I gave earlier, which is section E3.
Yes.
Thank you. And Judge, if the court considers this a deviation under section G3, just because we're suspending the last 5, there's authority to deviate based on an agreement between the state and the defense.
Okay, I see G3. Well, that's on the record now. I don't see anything that says these terms can't be probated or suspended. I'm less fluent in this area. Just we don't do lots of drug cases, or they're usually simple possession, so the numbers aren't this big. But what E3 says is minimum term of 25 years. But there's not language that we do find in some statutes that say, which may not be paroled, suspended, probated, or et cetera. That language isn't there. So this doesn't strike me as an improper sentence of basically 10 to serve, followed by 10 on probation, followed by 5 suspended. That would be the math. But if it is for some reason inconsistent with E3, then G3 seems to fix that.
Yes, Judge, I agree. Normally the state would see that language in there, but I just decided to put that out there for the court in case.
Yep.
Your Honor disagreed. Also, Your Honor, that statute carries a mandatory fine of $1 million.
It does.
And so the state would not be altering that
Okay.
requirement. Is that your understanding of the recommended sentence today, Ms. Singer?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand that the court is not required to accept the state's recommended sentence today?
Yes.
And do you understand that the court has the right to sentence you to the maximum possible sentence on the charge today?
Yes.
Do you understand that if the court decides to enter an order that differs from the negotiated plea that you're expecting today, that you have the right to withdraw your plea of guilty?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you are currently on probation or parole, that that probation or parole may be revoked based on you entering a guilty plea today?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you are placed on a probation of any kind, that you cannot violate any criminal laws of any governmental unit that includes municipal, county, state, or federal?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you are on probation, you must follow all of the special conditions of your probation?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you fail to follow all of the special conditions of your probation, then you will be subject to the revocation of that probation for the balance of your sentence?
Yes.
Do you understand that you are not allowed to possess or use a firearm while on probation?
Yes.
Are you a United States citizen?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, you may not receive, possess, or transport a firearm at all?
Yes.
Do you understand that doing so will result in new criminal charges for which you will face a sentence between 1 and 10 years?
Yes.
Do you understand that by entering a plea of guilty today, you're waiving any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the following rights? Those are the right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel, the right to the presumption of innocence, as well as the right to appeal if convicted of these charges at a jury trial?
Yes.
Is it your decision to waive these rights, which means to not use them, and enter a guilty plea today?
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter into a guilty plea?
No.
Is it your decision to enter a guilty plea because you are in fact guilty?
Yes.
How do you plead to the charge of trafficking in methamphetamine in indictment 21 SC 178259?
Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with the full knowledge of the charges against you?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you wish to challenge the voluntariness of your guilty plea, you must do so by filing a document that's called a habeas corpus petition?
Yes.
Do you understand that for a felony charge, you only have 4 years from today to file this habeas corpus petition?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time, Your Honor, the state will give a factual basis for the plea today.
Okay.
Were this to proceed to trial, Judge, the state will be able to show beyond reasonable doubt that on March 24th, 2021, Atlanta Police Department officers Brandon Pechtel and Sherrod Stansel were on patrol in an area near Metropolitan Parkway and Cleveland Avenue. They entered the parking lot of a Dollar General at 2690 Metropolitan Parkway. This is an area that's known for illegal drug sales. And so with that specifically in mind, they were entering the parking lot. Officers entered and noticed a gray Audi that was backed on the far side of the parking lot. There weren't many cars in the lot, but as they began driving towards the vehicle, they noticed that there were two white females inside, one of which ducked and began to appear as if she was trying to push something or hide something or moving her hands suspiciously. The officers parked their vehicle, they exited. Once the females observed the presence of the officers, they watched the officers approach. The officers who approached on foot made a general citizen encounter. At that point, Officer Stansel made the first contact. He went around to the passenger side, which is where Ms. Singer was sitting. He began to ask them what they were doing, if they were okay. They began to answer questions.
Were they in the
voluntarily.
back or the front of the Audi?
In the front, Judge.
Okay,
So-
so Ms. Singer is the front seat passenger. Someone you're going to tell me about was the driver.
Yes, Judge.
Okay.
But Officer Stansel mainly engaged the passenger, asking them questions to which they freely responded. The general encounter that began with just checking to make sure they're okay. During that conversation, Judge, Officer Stansel observed things that he indicated as suspicious behavior. Ms. Singer began to shake a bit. She appeared nervous during the encounter. She began to even sweat a bit. She began to make abrupt movements inside the vehicle. Officer Stansel at that point asked the general question if the occupants had any drugs or any narcotics inside the vehicle. Both occupants paused before answering the question and then said no. That pause, though, led the officer to believe that they were not being truthful, so he asked the question again. At that point, the passenger, the front passenger, Ms. Singer, stated that they had a joint. At that point, she lifted a cup, and underneath that cup was a marijuana joint that was exposed. And at that point, the officer asked the passenger if there was anything else in the vehicle, to which she responded hesitantly, yes. It was further divulged that there was methamphetamines inside the car. Officers asked both occupants to exit the vehicle. At that time, Officer Pechtel detained the driver of the car, and Officer Stansel detained the Singer, put her in the back of his police car. The vehicle was searched at that point. What was located on the floor of the front passenger side where Ms. Singer was sitting was a styrofoam container inside a black bag. Inside that styrofoam container was 1 kilogram of crystal meth. That was retrieved from the car. Officers also located THC edibles as well as 3 grams of marijuana. At that point, Ms. Singer was read her Miranda rights at the back of the police car at 8:15 p.m. She admitted to possessing the methamphetamines found in the car. She admitted to coming to that specific location daily to pick up methamphetamines and then dropping them off in Carrollton, Georgia. She also divulged that she was initially approached by a group of Hispanic individuals through someone she knew in prison. That is how she became involved in this. She received payment of about $1,500 daily for the pickups and drop-offs. She indicated that the person who she had picked up the drugs from had just left the location at that time, Judge. After the admission, Ms. Singer was arrested for trafficking. Later, the vehicle that the drugs were found in was released to the driver, who was now ultimately charged and arrested in this case. Those methamphetamines were seized. They were tested by the GBI, and they were confirmed to be the suspected methamphetamines in a report that was dated June 10th, 2021. And essentially, Judge, those are the facts that compose the indictment and charge in today's case.
Okay. Has this evolved into anything else that you're aware of? Figuring out where the drugs were coming from or where they were going, or that's out of your hands?
Judge, that's out of my hands. And I'll note that Ms. Singer afterwards refused to further cooperate with law enforcement officer.
Okay, got it. So we've got pretrial on. Good morning, pretrial. Could you tell me what you've got in terms of criminal history for Ms. Singer? Good morning, Mr. Howard.
Hey, Judge. Got a 2019 possession of meth, possession of drug-related object conviction out of Harrelson County. 2020, they gave her 3 years probation for that. So she's currently on probation. Hold on. And I see some indicted cases out of Harrelson County for, I think it's 6 counts of attempt or conspiracy to violate VGCSA
When you say indicted, meaning they're charged, but they're still open, no disposition.
Yeah, beside the disposition, it says indicted.
Okay,
Possession of meth with intent, possession of a Schedule 4 controlled substance, sale of marijuana, possession of meth with intent, another possession of a Schedule 3, 4, 5, and another possession of sale of marijuana. So those appear to be open. That's all though.
okay, so is that one case or is that a bunch of different cases?
One case.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Ms. Tucson. Do you have Ms. Singer's being on probation?
Good morning. I do not. There was a previous one that ended, and she's currently serving time for another Haralson County case.
So you've got two priors for Ms. Singer or one?
Two,
Okay.
and then a current one.
Got
So
it.
one in Carroll, one in Haralson, and then the current one is Carrollton County.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Judge. Just to first clear up the criminal history. After being arrested for this Fulton County case, her probation from 2020 in Haralson County was revoked in its entirety. The other cycle that pretrial referred to, she resolved with a guilty plea just a couple of months ago that resulted her being rehoused in Pulaski, where she was produced from. So that case has been resolved. I believe she got 5 years to serve on that. So I think the only thing
I'm going to stop you for a second. The one you say has just been resolved a couple of months ago. That's the 6 counts that Mr. Howard was telling us about.
Correct, Judge.
Okay, got it.
So the cases are resolved. What she has left pending would be the case before this court, for which we have, worked out a negotiated plea for your consideration. I won't really squabble with the facts, Judge. This case is remarkable in the way that kind of the investigation didn't even really require an investigation. Really can only be characterized as a type of crying for help. We've all dealt with many, many cases of different sorts. I've never really seen anybody go from, no, I don't have anything, to literally saying, I have a kilo of methamphetamine within about 30 seconds of being threatened with law enforcement. After that, Judge, he does cooperate. There are plenty of constitutional issues that would have arisen if there had been subsequent charges based on the statements and quote unquote gave after the discovery of this kilo, but they don't exist, unfortunately, for her benefit as this charge goes. But she does spend several hours speaking with law enforcement about not only her involvement, but giving specific information to other individuals in the community, one of which I know she was able to kind of name by name, but he is now deceased because of his own risky behavior sometime after that. So I don't know and don't believe that any substantive investigation leading to a discovery of a larger scheme was ever made, despite Ms. Singer's complete, kind of unraveling on that night. Judge, you'll see that those charges, the criminal history, are all fairly recent. Ms. Singer's 37 now, and she had no criminal history to speak of until she's 32. And she's gone from 0 to 60 really fast. And that's because she was not intending to participate in the drug trafficking game, if you will, but became addicted to methamphetamine, then was given an opportunity where she would make cash that you heard about, maybe in the amount of $1,500 or so on a day in which she would work, that, as you can imagine, she turned right around and gave back to those that were employing her so she could support a habit. She has experienced sobriety over the last year and a half that she's been in custody. She's been in continuous custody without making bond on this charge since March 24th, 2021. Prior to her more recent downfall at the hands of illicit drug use, she was a licensed real estate agent, a mother of 2. She currently has a 12-year-old and 9-year-old, which is kind of the saddest, aspect of this entire thing, knowing that she's going to have a long-term incarceration. I know she may want to address the court, Judge, but we would ask that you accept the plea as negotiated with this deviation. With the deviation, as I have discussed with Ms. Singer on multiple occasions, it's a non-parolable deviation. That 10 years means 10 years, unless the statutory scheme would change or the parole board decides to do something different. I have counseled her as such. It shows she does have an understanding of that with entering the plea. We just ask that she be credit for the time that she's been in leading up to the plea, Judge. And I'll turn it over to you and whether or not Ms. Singer wants to make a statement on her own.
Okay. Ms. Singer, I've got a couple questions for you. And then if there's anything you want to add, I'm happy to hear from you. It's your plea. It's not anyone else's. We were not able to do this plea last week, it may have been last week, the week before, because you weren't well or you were on quarantine. Are you doing a little better now in that area?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Are you taking any medication right now as a result of not being well?
No.
Okay. And so whatever you had, you feel well enough that you've understood what we've been talking about today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, great. You're the mom of 2 kids. Are they local? Where are they?
Yes, they live in Villa Rica with
Okay,
their father.
with their father. All right. And you used to be a realtor?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And then things took a turn for the worse. It sounds like maybe 3-ish years ago or so.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry that you deviated from the happy path you were on, and ended up where you were. Are there things you want to share with me that I haven't already heard, or that give some context that you want to provide?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
I understand and I acknowledge that my choices and behaviors put me in the position that I'm in today. And there's no excuse or justification, and I must be held accountable for the pain and hurt that I caused. I said, I know when I was arrested that God sat me down to save me, and I was just exhausted and tired of the path that my life had taken. And I truly saw my arrest as a way out. It was a way to get the help that I needed. You know, drugs don't discriminate, and my drug use, it ruined my life. You know, it spiraled out of control at 32, and I allowed the drugs to dictate who I was and how I moved in life. I associated myself with the wrong crowd and lost everything, and I hurt those that I loved. These last 20 months, I've been able to reflect on my behaviors and participate in programs such as the 12 Steps of Life Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, and peer counseling. And I've been able to listen to many testimonies as well as give my own. Rehabilitation starts from within, and acknowledging my problems and examining my behaviors and the pain that I've caused others and making amends is most important. I know because I have 2 beautiful children who are ultimately paying the price because of my decisions. They are now growing up motherless. I'm blessed to have a family and support structure that is able to facilitate contact, and I'm able to be there emotionally, but physically I'm absent, and not being able to be there for my children is the worst punishment I can receive. I'm pleading with the court to please reconsider the required time to be served in incarceration. And please don't let the mistakes and decisions I made define who or what you think I am. Please give me a chance to prove to the court that I have so much more to offer society. Please consider reduction in the time incarcerated so that I may allocate my time to raising my children, community service, and programs to help my peers, and to reach other mothers that have fallen down the path that I took. I want to leave a good and long-lasting impression on my community. My children, Mason is 9, and my daughter Sierra is 12, and they need a healthy, active, strong mother and a role model. So I'm asking that you allow me to please play an active role in their lives. My worst fear is that I will and I have already missed so many milestones in their lives. And I just really hope that I have the ability to be in the front row of their high school graduations. I mean, pretty much all I got.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Singer. Mr. Brown, what, as I mentioned at the outset, I spend less time working in the Chapter 13 of Title 16 about drug-related offenses. What is it in the statute or the related statutes that makes you believe that whatever number of years I impose for incarceration are non-parolable?
Yes, Judge, it wouldn't be a decision that this court would make, but my law firm and I represent lots of persons charged with trafficking in drugs and tier 3 category. When you get a time to serve that is deviated and is below the mandatory minimum required, the parole board does not grant any parole relief.
Okay.
They could change their point of view, but I have counseled, as I believe to be 100% as of today and in recent past, that there will be no benefit of parole when you go to the deviation of this nature.
Got it. So you are wisely sharing with Ms. Singer the worst possible scenario, which would be the status quo, which is not a statutory scheme, but a policy scheme that Pardons and Paroles has decided, as it is free to do, that if a judge deviates from the mandatory minimum in a trafficking case, then Pardons and Paroles is going to view that effectively as a recidivist sentence. And the defendant will do every day of the custodial portion of the sentence. But that is subject to change, not because the legislature changes it, but because Pardons and Paroles may say, we don't find that that's a wise policy anymore.
Correct, Judge. Negotiating times to serve on these sort of cases is a bit of a math game. I think Mr. Hand's pretty learned in it as well. And some of my other attempts for different outcomes, we're not able to, even this is what we've judged.
Okay, understood. Ms. Singer, what, if you're able to pinpoint it now, I'm sure you've thought about it a lot, but what happened in your life 5 years ago that moved you away from what was going on in a productive way to where you ended up?
I divorced my husband, and it was just me and my 2 young children. And I was working 14-hour days, and somebody gave me meth, and it just kept me awake and kept me going. I was just exhausted. You know, my ex-husband had taken a job out of town, so it was just me and the kids.
Okay. So the change, you had a family change, and then someone maybe meaning well introduced you to meth, and then that went in the direction it often does, and it ended up taking control of your life.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is your ex-husband a different person from your kid's dad?
No, they're this one and the same.
Okay, and that's where your kids are.
Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Brown, for sharing with me your experience with Pardons and Parole. And thank you, Ms. Singer, for getting a little personal with me and letting me know a bit about your background. It's helpful to understand. So it sounds like the 2 Harrelson convictions that you have, one that's closed out and then this more recent one, they both involve conduct that comes well before this situation. Is that?
It's kind of all encompassing in the same situation.
Well, it may be part of the same business you were in, but one of them, I guess, was from 2019 or 22. That has to have been.
That was just a simple possession.
Okay. The more recent plea that you took, it's directly connected to this situation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Ms. Singer, I find that there is a factual basis for your plea, and that your plea is knowing and voluntary. Voluntary means that you are moving forward because you think this is the best way to sort it out, as opposed to going to trial and seeing what a jury would do. And knowing simply means that you've understood all the things that we've talked about because you had a chance to consult with Mr. Brown. Do you feel that that's fair, that I find that your plea is knowing and voluntary, or disagree with that?
I agree, Your Honor.
Okay. I'm sentencing you pursuant to the Probation Options Management Act. And what that means, Ms. Singer, is that for the probated portion of your sentence, if you have a minor or a technical violation, you and probation will sort that out. But if it is something more severe, you get arrested again, or maybe you keep testing positive for drugs, that kind of situation will get bumped to me, and we would work through it with a different set of consequences. Ms. Singer, do you authorize my staff to electronically sign your indictment indicating your guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Brown, may we sign for you?
Of course.
And Mr. Hand?
Yes, Judge.
Ms. Singer, I'm going to deviate a little bit from what was negotiated in this case. The total number still needs to be 25. That is etched in stone by statute. What I'm going to do is sentence you to 8 years in custody, followed by 8 years on probation, followed by, what would that be? 8 and 8 is 16. So 9 years suspended. I can't do anything with that fine other than impose it. I trust Mr. Brown has talked to you that you're going to pay it off a little by little. It doesn't mean that you need to come up with $1 million on day one. It also doesn't mean that all your wages would be garnished until you pay it off. But it is a long-running financial burden. But it won't mean that you can't feed yourself or care for your family when you are on probation. I'm going to waive your probation supervision fees as long as that fine remains outstanding. So you'll spend money on paying down that fine and you won't be paying probation supervision fees. So again, that's 8 to serve. You'll get credit for all the time you've been in, about 2.5 years, followed by 8 on probation and then 9 suspended. You should know that the suspended portion doesn't mean it goes away forever. If we fast forward 17 years and you are on that suspended portion of your sentence, should something come up in your life that causes you to get mixed up with the criminal justice system again, prosecutors in Fulton County could seek to, I don't know if the verb is revoke, but there's a way to reinstate that balance and put you back in custody if you get in trouble while that suspended sentence is still running. It just means there's no probation, there's no supervision. You're free to go about your life however you see fit. It's just if those choices get you involved with the criminal justice system, the state can try to revoke those years in the same way that they might try to revoke years of probation if you got caught with another kilo of meth at your feet in a gray Audi. So it doesn't sound like that's the direction you're going to go, but I just want to make sure you understand that suspended years they're largely invisible, but they do carry a potential consequence if things go sideways for you that far down the road. Does that make sense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And again, that sentence is pursuant to 16-13-31 subsection E3, but I'll also invoke G3 of that same statute in case there's any question by the Department of Corrections of where did these numbers come from. They add up to 25, and so they are consistent with that statute. Mr. Hand, do you have anything else you want to get on the record in Ms. Singer's case?
No, Judge.
Anything else, Mr. Brown?
No, thank you, Judge.
All right, Ms. Singer, I have kids that are about the age of your kids, and so I am struggling to think about how difficult this would be for you. It's got to be hard. I think it's healthy that the first thing you think of is, I want to be there for my kids, as opposed to how can I get out, get back in the business or whatnot, as a sign that you've closed one chapter and are very ready to get on to another chapter. And it was encouraging that another thing you want to do is see if you can help other moms who find themselves mixed up in what you did to see if there's a different route for them. So you're going to be out of commission for a while longer, but I wish you the best when you are released. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Ms. Tucson, are there any reporting instructions, or that's far enough down the road that Ms. Singer will deal with that when she's released?
If I can get an address to put in the system, reporting instructions are usually given around the time of either parole or release to the facility.
Do you have a sense, Ms. Singer, of where you'd be living when you're released, or that's far enough down that TBD?
No, it's it would be 207 Devonwood Lane, DEVONWOOD, Devonwood Lane, Bremen, Georgia, 30211. 110.
207 Devidwin Lane, Bremen, Georgia 30110.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Brown, thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. Howard, Ms. Tucson. We are done. I think that's it for this Zoom session. So I appreciate everyone getting on.